Okay, good morning everyone. I'm Dean Hoffman of the USTA and I'd like to welcome you to this seminar on yearling preparation conducted by Albert Adams and the staff at Winterwood Farm. Mr. Adams will discuss doesn't begin 2 weeks or 2 months before the sale. It begins really in planning the mating and the foaling and the trimming. You get a foal with that stands a little bad. Do you wait until a month before the sale to start corrective trimming? No, you start corrective trimming when the foal is young and you still got time to work with them.
I know everybody here is interested in yearling preparation. Well, I should say that our way obviously is not the only way. Weaning, when to wean. We like to wean right after Lexington. But because we sell at Harrisburg, our barn's always full of yearlings. We don't have room. We don't wean, like in Kentucky, I always weaned. I just pulled the mares out, left the babies with their buddies, and they had a creep to go into, and it works just super. And that's the best way to do it if you have some numbers and want to do it. They're used to going in the creep eating, and what we'd do, we'd go in there in the morning, we'd feed the creep, feed the mares, and then while the babies are all in there eating, we'd slip out a couple of mamas. They'd never notice it. I swear they'd never notice it. They would go about their business just like, is that how you do it, Wayne? Or, no? Yeah, it works. But anyway, on a farm like this, we get all ours up. We wean all ours after Harrisburg. Some of them are older, but as long as you feed your mares good and they stay in good condition, you're just fine. It doesn't bother. They might wean that baby themselves, which makes it a little easier when the time comes. We like to get them up, and then we, of course, they're all broke to lead as babies on their moms, and all of our foals are broke to lead. And then when we wean them, we start all over again because they do miss their mamas that way, and that's the only reason I don't like doing it that way. But they get over it pretty quick, and usually none of them get hurt. If you have like one yearling, you probably know you shouldn't raise it by itself. Many years ago at Elmhurst, I picked out a few yearlings that I thought were my best yearlings, and I said, you know, every year I go and I get bumps on these good ones and everything. I'm going to try raising them by themselves. So I had 8 big stud paddocks there at Elmhurst and didn't have them all full of stallions. I took 4 of them and raised 4 single individuals. Well, Billy Houghton cussed me for it because he bought a colt that would actually on a racetrack charge other colts because he didn't know what it was all about. They need to be socially smart. So if you just have like one, you need to get another one, or you need to borrow one from somebody. The thing about, it's just like us, if people want us to raise their weanlings, yearlings sort of thing, we always want them at least by the first of the year. Because if you start putting them together after that, they'll pick on that colt. Sometimes you can put fillies together easier than you can colts. However, sometimes the fillies are more ornery than the colts, as a lot of you probably know that. Especially when you go in to feed them. Colts will just stand there like old guys and be gentlemen, but the fillies, they'll go to kicking at one another and might get you. So, and that's another thing when you're raising yearlings, be really careful because they sure will kick you. And you know, you can go in and think you got them, oh, mine's tame, they know me, and be petting on them, and well, it might not be you they're kicking at, but they're kicking at their buddies, so you can't get out of the way quick enough. So you have to be really careful. Well, the environment today, pretty much everybody keeps their yearlings out. Now, if you've only got a couple of yearlings and you got the time to do it, and you can stall them separately and feed them separately if that's what they need, that's great. You can't do that with 12 or 15 in a group. You just can't do that. Ideally, how much land per yearling? You know, in Kentucky, we had a lot of land. It was kind of nice, really. We'd have 2 or 3 acres per yearling. We don't have that here, but we try to make up for it by having really good hay and feeding good feed and lots of it, and making sure that it's so important when you bring them up to start getting them ready for the sale that you've got something there to work with. Some of them might be too fat, and we don't like fat yearlings. Some of them might not be carrying enough flesh, but you can put it on them. And depending on how they are, it's kind of really how much time you need to take to get them ready. But it's kind of seldom that you have one. I don't think we have got one this year that isn't carrying enough flesh. The colts, of course, take a lot more feed. Right now our colts are taking twice as much feed as the fillies are because they're so rough, they play so rough. So I think if you don't have the amount of acreage that you want per horse, you have to make it up somehow. Fertilizing is one way that you keep that pasture coming every year. We if we can't afford to fertilize the rest of the farm, we make sure our yearling fields are fertilized every year. It'd actually be ideal to do it in the fall and in the spring. Give it a little boost in the spring. But yeah, it's very important to drag them. Every fall we drag them, and sometimes in the springtime we'll try to get them dragged also. Last year we checked our lime. They did tests on that, and they told us that we didn't need any because I was fully prepared. I hadn't limed for a while, fully prepared to go ahead and get some liming done. And you know what? I don't believe them. I still think I need lime. Have you ever run into that? Because if you see any moss in any of your grass, that's telling you that you need to sweeten it up. My #1 grass that I like is Kentucky bluegrass. I was down there for so many years, and I know what that grass will do. It puts fat on a horse like you can't believe. Like a lot of other grasses, it's a very palatable grass. They love to eat it. It's like eating candy. Horses will just go out in that nice grass, and it's a fine grass. That's my favorite grass. I've had trouble getting my fields here like I really like to have them as far as the bluegrass, but we have bluegrass as our base. You know, we throw in some timothy and a little bit of alfalfa, a little bit of Dutch clover. What it is really is that every area needs a different pasture mix, different ground you get, and that might be why I have a little trouble getting as much bluegrass as I want here, you see. And the other thing is, when you're trying to get bluegrass, you got to keep it mowed down pretty good, because the other grasses will come up and they'll smother out the bluegrass. So you
want to talk about run-in sheds? Are they important? Are they?
Yes, I mean, I've raised them without any shelter, and you can do that, but I prefer, especially in the flies. Now, in the summertime, in the spring, summertime, when the flies get bad, and we're looking at trying to keep the sunburn off these babies, our yearlings will go in the sheds and stay there all day long out of the flies. We keep hay in there, we keep them bedded with straw, they're fed grain morning and night, and they'll spend the day in there out of the terrible heat we've had and all the flies we've had. But the sheds are definitely a way to go, and we've got a lot more sheds to build in this farm. But we build our yearling shed, and it's one side's colts and one side fillies, solid wall part way up and with wire in the top so they can kind of see each other, but we have hot wire in there so that they can't get together. We run our fillies one way, run our colts another way. We have one field's bigger and one field's a little smaller, so the biggest group, whether it's colts or fillies, we'll swap about each year so that one will have more grass than the other does.
What about handling the yearlings during this time, you know, from the time they're weaned until you get them up? Do you handle them much? Do they have much human interaction?
Yeah, when we worm them, trim them, we check them twice a day when we feed them, check them twice a day. We make sure that all gates are fastened, and it scares me when yearlings get out. Some have halters, some don't have halters, and we prefer none of them have halters, but we keep halters on some of them so we can catch the easy catchers. And
maybe you can elaborate on why you would not want a halter on a yearling in a field. I know that makes them more difficult to catch, but it also gives them an opportunity to get hurt.
Yeah, I've had horses get hung with their halters, and you think your field, you go around it, you check your fences, you check your building, everything. There's no way a horse can get hurt here. Can't hang a halter here. Well, they'll find a place. They'll find a way.
Well, you'd rather have a leather one or a breakaway, right?
I'd rather have one that would break away. Yeah, that's right. We usually try not to put. We do have some nylon halters, but usually we try to put a leather halter on because they'll break them. And so it's nice if you've got. You know, if you've got like one or two and it's just running all the time, I probably wouldn't even have a halter on it because I wouldn't have that worry. It could never get hung up. But if it's a horse that's hard to get a halter on or whatever, then I'm thinking there that I'm going to keep a halter on you, Buster. Yeah.
I think some of the interaction that we have during the feeding tends to help a lot.
That's what you do when you wean.
Right.
Is that when you're...
Yep.
Well, it's real easy to break them to lead with the mamas. And you take and put both those ropes in that hand and come together with it, and Mom will almost pull that baby out there for you. But they're not really broke when you're doing that. Then that's how we break all of ours, on the right side of the mare, and we're walking on the left side of the mare, leading them. But they're not really broke until one person can lead that baby and one person can lead that mare. Then they're really broke. But to get them going and get them started, we do that way. And like Mark said, our yearlings, like we go down, we feed the grain, then I go back through with, we feed Strongid C, daily wormer, and Macintosh supplement. When we go back through and put that on, I go along underneath them, ducking my heads. They never move, they never lift their damn heads to quit eating. But that's how gentle they are. I mean, you know, and you'd have to know your colts and fillies before you'd ever want to do something like that. But, and if there's one that you know is nice, then you just kind of pet him on the shoulders, you go through, you know, and everything.
What about yearlings that kind of chew on tails and they rub their tails and
yep.
They rub their mane?
Yeah, fish oil works great. It's nasty stuff, and it'll stay with you like diesel fuel or anything else. But it really works. They'll quit chewing tails. Now, when that starts, when you see that happen, they'll just about chew them all out overnight. I mean, you know, they really go fast. So, yeah, and you know, to me, I'm sorry, but nothing looks worse than a horse going to the sale ring with his tail this long.
Talk a little bit about corrective trimming, and not only for yearlings, but from the time they're foaled. You know, they all don't come out of the mare perfect, and you have to assess that and then work with your farrier to know what to do, but not starting 2 months before the sale.
That's really important to watch them. Now, we just trimmed babies, what, a week ago or so? Yeah. And you know, if you really look at a bunch of foals, you don't see very many that are correct. Most of them have got some kind of a little corrective work that needs to be done to them. So we get serious about it this fall on. We watch it through the spring and everything, especially on your older foals.
A lot of TQ in them, just a little bit to take the edge off.
We keep a lot of TQ around, yeah. Whether we're shipping horses or trimming horses or whatever. Our blacksmith, Jim, prefers not to do that because, as you know, when you do that, well, they want to do this then. They want to lay on them all the time and everything. So we try not to do it, but when we get one that absolutely you can't do, we're going to take the edge off him. Now, we do what a lot of people don't like. We put the chain over the upper lip, see? Yeah, and yeah, well, they learn pretty quick, and even well, you know, I hate the twitches. We use them, and we've got a bunch of twitches around here, and we use them when we have to. Yeah, but they want to fight a twitch, a lot of horses do, and so we kind of prefer not to do that, but we use about a cc of rompin, about a half a cc of torbagesic.
Vaccination program on your Englands and yearlings?
Pretty much we use the 6-way innovator. It does 6 different things. You know, we've never used West Nile. Don't ask me why. I don't know why. I keep asking my vet about it. Everybody's doing it, but anything that new comes along, I'm afraid to do it. I'll be quite honest with you. I've seen a lot of things happen to horses that nobody can explain why it happened, but we have an idea why it happened. It's just like we had one person that gave it, and his mares aborted, wasn't that right, son? Yeah. And he's got very, very expensive mares. And he laid it on that. I mean, he said, there is no question about my mind. He said, we inoculated them for it, and they all aborted. They didn't all abort. He had several of them that aborted. And so that scared him off it, and it made me think about it.
I use it all the time.
You use it all the time?
Well, the first year I came to the farm, they had 3 mares that died that fall with the West Nile, so I didn't have much choice.
Oh, no kidding.
And I haven't had any trouble with it at all.
Yeah. We've not had any West Nile in this area that I'm aware of. If anybody's had anything, they've kept it quiet. But so that's one thing that would make me use it in a hurry, I guess, if I thought I was in trouble or something. But we have a lot of horses around. I know we have mosquitoes, but we never... and I think another thing, too, about that, you know, is that if you're feeding your mares good, your mares are good and healthy, they're carrying some flesh, I think they overcome some of those things.
Albert, you want to talk about periosteal stripping, what they can do for horses that foals that don't stand well?
And what it is, periosteal stripping, is they go in there and they strip the bone, and it creates a growth pattern that if you've got a horse that toes in or toes out, you can quite often you can help those horses. And everybody does it now. I mean,
if you're going to sell a yearling, you're going to enhance the yearling's value a great deal by staking it. That is, nominating it to various events. That's the way the game is played. You know, there's an old expression that says you can't win them if you aren't in them. And the way that you're in them, or the way that your yearling is in them, is by nominating them to various stakes. I wouldn't advise anyone to take a yearling to a sale with no stakes engagements at the bottom of the catalog page. In fact, I think some sales wouldn't take those yearlings.
Sales, they have a minimum number.
So, but how much you stake your yearling is a decision that really only you can make, but it is an important decision. It's not very difficult to spend $500 nominating a yearling or more to various stakes. And that's fine if you're selling a $100,000 yearling, but if you're selling a $5,000 yearling and you've spent $500 on stakes nominations, there's 10% of your possible purchase price right there. So you do have to look at the cost and where you nominate them to. Certainly if you have a horse that's in a sire stakes program, let's say Pennsylvania, you want to make sure that you nominate that horse to the Pennsylvania Parimutuel and the Fairs division. That's kind of your base, and then you would work from there out, I think. You might want to stake to the Arden Downs because that's at the Meadows in Pennsylvania, and look for other stakes. But then how far you branch out is really how much money do you want to spend and how much confidence do you have in this horse. We all know that the way that the stakes racing game is played is that most of these horses will never race in these stakes that they're nominated to. It's a percentage game. I mean, I've raised yearlings, staked them, and these yearlings will never see those races. But it's possible. It's possible for them to race in those things because we've nominated them. Now, once you have your base core of stakes, then you can maybe sort of add on. For example, if you've got an Ohio-sired pacing yearling, would you like to nominate it to the Little Brown Jug? Sure, that'd be nice. Wouldn't everybody like to have a colt that would win the jug? Or even a colt that would start in the jug? Well, the only way that's going to happen is if you make that nomination payment that is a yearling. Now, let's be realistic. What are the chances that your colt is going to race in the jug? There's probably a long shot, probably a real long shot, but it could happen. It could happen, and if you miss that nomination payment on races like the Jug or the Hambletonian, they're not going to have an opportunity to get into those races because there are no supplemental payments. So you have to really exercise some discretion there, and you want to have a catalog page with a number of engagements down by your yearling underneath your catalog page, because I think that's an expression of your confidence in your yearling's ability. If you don't stake the yearling to anything, what kind of message are you sending to the buyer? You're telling the buyer that you don't have much confidence in this horse, and if the seller doesn't have much confidence, why should the buyer have much confidence? So you've got to reach that happy medium between spending a lot of money on stakes engagements and not trying to go broke in the process, or spending too much money, or nominating for stakes that are so far removed from your area, maybe in California or Maine or something like that. I can remember about 4 or 5 years ago at Harrisburg, there was an Ontario-sired colt by Camluck that went into the ring. And I looked at the bottom of the catalog page, and I think he had about 6 engagements at the bottom. And that's quite unusual at Harrisburg. He was an Ontario, he was eligible to the Ontario Sire Stakes and some other Ontario races. But he brought over 200 and some thousand. But that's pretty unusual. And he's turned out as a horse called Our Lucky Colleen. He's turned out to be one of the top pacers in Canada now, but he was very lightly staked. But that's one occasion where the buyer overlooked that because he saw other virtues, or just thought Ontario was good enough. I don't know that colt was eligible to the Jug. I don't know if he was eligible to some of the other big races, but most of the times you'll see your major farms and your major breeders will have a set list of trotting stakes and pacing stakes. That's a pretty good standard to follow, but you don't have to follow that for everything. You may not have the money, or you may not have the desire to nominate for everything. The USTA publishes an excellent stakes guide. There's a yearling section. Most of the yearling payments, I think, are due May 15th. And you can look at that and you can see what the costs are. I think it's $100 to nominate a yearling to the Hambletonian. You have a couple yearlings, that adds up. And Breeders' Crown isn't expensive, but they're big races. These are the races that we dream about winning. But sometimes you can nibble around the fringes a little bit and find some stakes that are maybe a $5 or $10 nomination fee, and you can nominate to those. That helps get more stakes down toward the bottom of your page. It looks better. We all know that they may or may not ever race in these events, but it's important to have a good list of stakes nominations at the bottom, because it's an expression of your confidence in the horse. And once again, your confidence will reflect in the buyer's in the buyer's confidence. So it's very important in the spring to start thinking about yearling nominations, what makes sense for your horse. If you have a Valley Victory out of Moneymaker, you want to stake them to the hilt. You want to stake them to everything that you can. But if you have a horse that's by a regional sire or a local sire, then you have to be very judicious. If you're going to sell that horse, you don't want to wind up spending, as I said, 10% or more just on stakes nominations, because that really affects your profit.
Should you select stakes depending on where you're selling the horse?
I think so. I think that makes a lot of sense. But you never know who's going to buy your horse. And of course, if you have more stakes nominations, that really gives the buyer more freedom to, race the horse where he or she wants.
Just like Ohio, for instance, like you do Cleveland Stakes, Scioto, anything that we. What I usually do with mine is I go on out to Indianapolis, DuQuoin, and the western ones.
The Meadows.
Yeah, the Meadows, right.
And if you have an Ohio sired yearling or something like that, as he says, you may want to nominate in the Midwest. You may want to try some of the stakes in New York or in New Jersey or something like that. But then that's a matter of discretion. How much money? How much does it cost to nominate? What are the chances if they're buying an Ohio sired yearling? That's your base. And if it's a good Ohio sired yearling, it can make some money. It'd be nice if they were eligible to all these other races, but you have to reach the fine line there between spending too much and not enough.
I think you can spend about $800 now, if I'm not mistaken, or $830 or something like that. I know we had 2 or 3 that got everything this year, and I think that's we stake our own rather than pay somebody a couple $100 to do it. Now, number one, that person doesn't really know what you want or what you need. It's easy to just say, go ahead and stake my yearling, and they just put them in everything. Anybody can do that, but you can do it yourself if you just get the stakes guide, like Dean said, and you're at least familiar with Ohio and whatever stakes would be raced at the local track. Transfer.
We're gonna, Albert, do you imprint your foals?
Mark, do you imprint your foals?
Question on imprinting.
I said we believe in it, but we don't really do it. But we spend a lot of time with our babies, and I think it's kind of the same thing. They get to trust you, and they get to like you, and so they'll do things that they won't do if they don't like you or you don't spend any time with them.
But not any special noises or...
No, I mean, our tractor's pulling through the barn all the time, and yeah, there's lots going on around the farm, as you know. But repetition, right? Repetition is what really makes them do what you want them to do.
At what age do you start trimming your foals, Albert?
Depends on the foal. I'm sorry, but it really depends on the foal. Well,
With long toes that I feel like it needs trimmed right.
Absolutely, yeah. When I was at Elmhurst and we'd be teasing mares and we'd see a doggone foal with too much toe, friends say, grab your knife. I reach in the pocket and get my great big knife out. I start peeling that doggone thing off, because you don't want them sitting down like this because their toes are too long. You want to get them standing up where they're supposed to be. So yeah, no, to tell you what age, it could be a month, it could be 2 months. I mean, yeah, was 2 months old? It definitely is ready.
Albert, I had something I wanted to ask. When I go down to look at the yearlings there, and you have the colts on one side, as you say, and the fillies on the other side, one thing I notice is there's always a radio playing down there in the
like music. When we get our babies weaned and put them in the barn here, we turn the radio up as loud as it'll go, because we don't want them hearing mamas and we don't want them hearing their buddies, and so we down at the yearling barn, we keep the radio goes 24 hours a day down there.
You wean your weanlings. Do you keep them? Do you separate them completely to clear away from them, or do you keep them on the other side?
No, when we wean ours, we'll take the mares to the farthest field we got. Yeah, so that they can't hear them, because all that does is aggravate the situation. Horses should look like athletes. The ribs should be covered, but you should be able to feel them. And I would rather, for the success of the horses, in other words, when you sell a real fat yearling, the guy puts the shafts on him, he starts jogging him, and he starts going too fast with him, and pretty soon he's breaking that baby down because he's carrying too much weight. A lot of horses, I don't think, that are like that have a chance to get rid of that fat before they're going too fast with them. So they're carrying all that weight around, and those bones, they're still babies. So the thin yearling is actually going to make it easier and be successful before the fat yearling is. But you're trying to sell him, and you don't want him going in there thin for sure. I just look at a horse. We'll look at a group of yearlings, and we know about where we want to. We're going to give them 5 gallons, or we're going to give them whatever we're going to give them. And then if we sit down and figure out quarts, well, that's probably not going to be quite enough. We'll raise it just a little bit. But you want to be able to look at your yearlings and see. In other words, if you're not satisfied that yearling it needs more feed, just raise it gradual to a point where you feel that you can do some good. It's hard to say, Dean, give 10 pounds, give 5 pounds, give 14 pounds. It's hard to say that.
But what happens in a group if you have one that's not doing well at all, but you're still feeding in a group? How do you compensate for his?
He compensates himself. I've never had a horse that I've had to take out of a group because he wasn't doing well. But you know what you're doing? You're feeding for that thin one, see? In other words, you're keeping lots of feed there because that thin horse he's got to come along too. So you're getting, some of them maybe be getting a little too heavy on you, but that'll all level itself out throughout the year, you see. And if not, when you do get them up in the barn to start prepping them, if you got some you're going to take weight off, you're going to back him down to a handful of grain twice a day or something, and take the weight off of him. And the other one you can feed the heck out of him. But I've never had a yearling that I had to take out of a group because he was too thin.
What are you feeding? What products? You have some products over here that...
We feed Horseman's Edge. It's a 12%. We're given alfalfa hay, which probably makes up for some of that, not being in the 14% bracket. We feed this Macintosh supplement, which I really believe in. I don't feed as much as they recommend because if I did, I couldn't afford it. But I feed enough that it seems to do the job. Now these yearlings are in the barn. The first 3 here have only been up 2 weeks. And I tell you quite honestly, we could put them in the sale ring today if we had to. See? Now, I used to always say 8 weeks to get a yearling ready. The reason you say 8 weeks is because we used to have so many people bringing us yearlings in to sell, and they weren't ready to, they weren't conditioned. They had no condition on them. So you really got to start conditioning them, and you can't condition a yearling overnight. It takes weeks. If you get a thin yearling, comes into a thin yearling and his ribs are all sticking out, man, you got your work cut out in 8 weeks to have that colt looking like he should. Earlier.
Albert, you talked before about feeding alfalfa. Let's talk a little bit about hay, the importance of hay, good hay, knowing good hay from bad hay, and how important is that to raising yearlings?
I go more on the smell of hay than I do the looks of it. Hay should smell like candy, and you should want to eat it. Now, when it's got a little bit of a forage smell, or I could say forage or silage smell to it, it was baled with too much moisture in it. Lots of times we feed it. If we think it's safe to feed, we feed it because that's what most people are feeding. But you can get in trouble with it. And it's kind of like, well, it's not exactly, but I remember one of my neighbors in Lexington, there's a big thoroughbred farm, and he went to the harvest stores in Halage. And I think they lost the first go-around, the first day they lost like 9 mares.
Oh, really?
Wiped 40-some horses out before they found out what the problem was. Yeah. So that's my example is just that, you know, that it tells you can't feed anything. And of course what happens to silage and haylage a lot of times is that you get the mold in there. And horses will not tolerate that. They get toxic very quickly. And it's a very hard thing to treat.
What about worming? Worming yearlings, worming foals. What do you use? How often?
We use different products. I think we like a thiabendazole base for babies. Panicure, we don't usually use ivermectin on our babies till they're probably 4 months old. We'll use a thiabendazole product, Panicure or whatever. We start pretty young, like when they're over a month old, we'll start worming every month. You can't worm them too often. You can not worm them often enough. It's a simple thing. Again, it's a common sense thing, folks. It's just the babies have worms, older horses have worms. You gotta keep them wormed, and that makes a big difference, a major difference in how your foals look. is whether they're wormy or not. Major difference. We weigh our babies. Well, we use a tape weight on our babies when we worm, and so that way it tells you, it lets you use exactly the right amount that's prescribed by the prescription for the medication. And we just have actually it's a Purina tape, you've seen them, Wayne, and it tells you how much they weigh and makes it real easy.
You worm once a month all the way up to sale time, or do you?
Until we get them in the fall when they're weaned, and then we take them to the yearling shed, and then they go on the Strongyne C daily wormer. And then when we give that, we usually supplement that with tube worming maybe every second month.
When you use Ivomec, do you give it orally in the mouth or do you inject it with a syringe?
No, we give the paste, ivermectin paste.
What about exercise when they're being prepped for the sale? How much exercise? Do they get turned out? When? How long?
We turn them out every day, and basically they don't take enough exercise, but they kind of exercise according to how they feel. If they feel like running and playing, they do. If they don't, they drop the head and go to eating grass. And usually those kind we don't leave out too long. If we could afford it, we'd have an equicizer. I think they're great. They're way too expensive. But when you've got, you've got several yearlings to get ready, they're really nice to have that exercise that you know that yearling needs. Now I think it can be overdone, because after all, you're working with the bones that haven't reached, they're still growing. It's like when we put these 2-year-olds in training, we're beating on them and putting pressure on them, and their bones are still trying to grow and develop. So it's, again, it's a common sense thing, but the equicizer, you know they're going to get in there and be forced to take some exercise. If they're lazy, don't matter. That old electric thing hits them in the butt and they move up. We just turn our colts out in the paddock.
In pairs or single or?
We turn them out individually, and there's a lot of different reasons for it. When we first get them up, sometimes we'll try just keep turning them out together. But when you keep doing that and they don't want to come in, it gets hard to catch them. Exercise is important, but your yearling, it's nature's way that he goes out there and takes his exercise. So why do you want to force him to take more exercise or too much exercise? But I would like to have an equicizer. I think they'd be great to show a little more muscle development.
What's the concern on a nice day like this, or when you've had a lot of good weather, about sunburned hair? A lot of people go out and seek the sun, but you don't want the yearlings in the sun, do you?
No, because it dulls the hair coats, and it's hard to get that sunburned hair out. That's why our yearlings, like these 3 here, there's very little sunburn in them, because what they're doing in the hot sun during the daytime, they're up in the sheds. Now it's cooler this morning, they may be out. They will spend, it's funny how they do, they'll spend more time. When I fed them this morning, of course I was a little early, but they were all out. And usually they meet me in the barn in the mornings. But we've had really, really muggy weather here, and they're just trying to get away from it.
So when you get into the grooming and the sales prep process, how do you get rid of that sunburned hair?
But bathing helps to loosen the horse's hair, where it'll brush out. It'll come out easy enough.
Do you clip them?
No, we don't clip them. And the only trouble with that is when you clip a horse and you got to grow that new hair in, it's going to take some time before that looks natural again. It's going to look like he was clipped.
Do you bathe them every day?
No, we don't bathe them every day. We'll bathe them twice a week, maybe, Linda. There's no question that really getting the yearling ready is a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of muscle. You got to really rub, and you got to get in there and rub serious. We don't use vacuums, but they're good. Vacuums are good. I always used them in Kentucky. Again, part of it is you end up just like we are. We've got a lot of yearlings to get ready, but we've got to watch what we spend on it. So Linda's real cheap, so that I can keep it. So we try to, we got to make a profit. All you people have to make a profit. So you do things that maybe if you didn't have to do it that way, you wouldn't do it that way.
One of the things that I don't think Ab stressed enough that really is important to me is that he gives me something to work with. if I don't have something to work with, whether it be coat and manners and so forth, I can't do it all by myself. So they come in, and then I just got this awesome product to work with to get them ready for sale. That's the key. Your feed, your supplements, your worming program, all of that, your exercise, all of that is a big deal, So now that I've said that, there's 3 different boxes here. This one here is my daily box. This one here is what I use at the sale. And this one here is a lot of our bathing products, okay? On a daily basis, I usually try to go through all of them. It depends upon how many are up at that time. But it's just elbow grease, really. And when they first come in, of course, they're really nervous. I mean, like me. And a lot of times they don't really want to, they don't even want to be touched. They don't want to, they're good to lead and they're good to go in and out, that kind of thing. But when it comes to being touched, they're not happy with it whatsoever. So, especially the ones that are really jumpy. This is what I start with, and I came across this a few years ago. It's awesome. It's rubber. Any place has it. Big D's has all of this stuff. Most of it comes from them, or when I go to the Quarter Horse Congress, I'll pick something up. But they love this, and they learn, I would say, even on the second day, a lot of times, they learn that this feels really good. And when I make them feel good, they lose the skitsiness and they just start quieting down and saying, okay, this isn't so bad, okay? From there, I go to this curry, which really lifts out the dirt, okay? It really makes them, it takes out the dead hair and the dirt, okay? So those are the first 2 things. Then a soft brush of some sort. I don't use this that often. Once in a while on the face, especially if one is really hyper and isn't sure of what I'm going to do and so forth, I will use that. Most of the time it's this, okay? It's softer. It's not the real harsh one like this. I brought this out. I very rarely use this. Like in riding horses, you use it to get the dirt off and so forth. I don't like that with these. They're much more sensitive than most of the riding horses. So this is usually the one that I'll use. And then, of course, the comb for the mane and tail. One of the things about prepping is maybe like the second week, if they're quiet and so forth, the manes are usually burnt on the end. You've got the red ends on them or the golden ends, and it looks awful. And also a lot of times they're long and they're all different lengths. Ab likes them to be even, okay? So we will just clip off. What I will do is I'll just clip into the mane like this, okay, not pulling it, just clip into it this way and clip into it this way, and it helps to take off the dead ends, okay, and it looks so much better. These are guys, they're not totally finished, but you can see their manes are a little bit more even, so you can just see what when you go inside. Use that on the tail if they're dead? No, I don't even touch the tails. When I get to the bathing, I'll explain what really happens, what works good with that. Okay, feet, which takes me a while to get to. A lot of times the first week I don't get to the feet. I do get to the legs, but I don't necessarily get to the feet. So when I do, there's a certain way, and I really, being the age that I am and being just a woman, safety is a huge thing because a lot of times I am working by myself. I do have people stop in and check on me, but I do a lot of the work by myself. So this is just an awesome way for if a woman is working on the horse, or even you guys have a lot more strength when it comes to picking up a horse's hoof than I do. So what I do is this just goes around the horse's hoof, goes like this, say here's their head, just goes around like this on their ankle, and I use this to pull it up. It's soft. It also is a good way to desensitize them. I will run it around the front of the leg. You just stick your arm up here, just thank you. I will run it around the arm of the leg, and I will just desensitize all the way down, okay? It's really awesome because it teaches them, for when you go to brush them, it makes it easier, okay? Then when I want to pick up the hoof, I will just pick it up and pull. And they get used to that pulling. And eventually, a lot of times I'll leave this on and I will just go down the leg and just to get used to them. And it's not traumatic for them. It works out really good. It's much easier. The hind legs, which are so dangerous anyways, I will just go down, I will just start like up at the tail, loop it around the inside, and again, just desensitize everything. A lot of times, I'll even take the rope and go up over the back because it desensitizes them and they don't mind things going up over their back anymore. A lot of times when I use rags, when they're used to things that goes up on their back. It's just desensitizing every single part of the horse. And I think that's really important. There isn't anything on these horses that doesn't get touched. They're used to everything. When they go to sale, I'm trying to hurry here. When they go to sale, they're used to people patting them on their rear end. If you get a yearling in there that's not used to that, you will have them jumping down the aisleway or on the handler that's using them. Not a good thing. It's just really tough. We use these trailer ties in the stalls, okay? Usually they have another snap on here. It makes it easier for me. I have a hard time with these or the bull snaps. And Ab has rings on both sides of the stall. I will not go on the other side of the horse and put myself in the stall, because if I need to get out, I can't. So if this goes on one side, I do that whole complete side. Then I go and I just switch them over and I do the other side. So it's like they get used to that, and they're awesome about it. They usually will test this, so you do need to have a good halter on them. Once they test it once or twice, they practically never do it again, you know. Now, as far as the grooming goes, elbow grease is the key, okay? And once you get a lot of the dead hair out, the next thing that I will do when I am all done with grooming and got all the stuff off of them that I want, the best product that is out there as far as I'm concerned is this laser sheen. This is a concentrate. I mix 1 ounce in a bottle about this size. This is not Miracle Groom, it's laser sheen. This here goes on the towel. It also goes in the tails. It makes it a lot easier to comb out. There's a lot of other products out there, but I found that this one works the best. It also is not tacky and not sticky, so that when a horse lays down in the stall with either sawdust or straw or whatnot, it combs right out or it brushes right off. And it also, if you need to, you can clean a horse with this. Just spray it on your rag, spray it directly on the coat, whatever you do. It doesn't make any difference. It just is awesome. It gives an awesome sheen, an awesome finish without the tackiness, without burning the fur. And I think this is probably the best thing that we use here because it does go on all of them. Foot-wise, I like the Rainmaker. It's not too thick so long as you don't leave it out in the winter, which sometimes for Harrisburg is a little bit tough. But I'll keep it in the office, and that usually works. It goes, I mean, it's just awesome. It really conditions the foot. The blacksmith never complains about when he comes and so forth, but I also use this when I'm finishing, before I'm going in the arena. We used to use baby oil, and most of the time, though, it's just this. I like the naturalness of it. I don't care for the shininess. Albert doesn't really care for the shininess either, so this is what we've been using. All right. Now, let me just go over bathing. I don't bathe every day, maybe bathe once a week, but I find it's more important just to get them under the hose in a wash stall or wherever it is that you're going to do it, and curry the coat. A lot of times, rather than the plastic one, I will use one like this. I don't like the round ones. This one is better. It gets into the fur deeper. And this will just lift out all the, not only the dirt, but the fur. But what happens is with the water, I don't like using the shampoos because no matter how good they are, they still take stuff out. So I would prefer to use this. So this is what we do anyways. Like they all had a bath yesterday, and when they're getting a bath before going to the sale, not at sale time, before going to sale, I use the mane and tail, okay? There's a lot of other products out there. You can use whatever you want, but this works for me. And it is expensive, and I don't need very much of it. And then before they go to sale, we have this here, which is for your light horses, your grays. Also any white markings, whether it be on the legs, or it really whitens them up. It needs to be rubbed in and left on, so I usually will do this first. The darker horses, they come out with one for the darker horses. And I wasn't using this for a long time. We were using other things, but I've used this over the last few years, and it does make a difference. It does intensify the coat and gives them a good sheen. When they're all done bathing, sure.
Now you put that on and leave it on, don't wash it out? Or?
Oh no, it's just shampoo. I just wash it. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll just put it on my hand and just run it down the back and then curry it in, you know, to use as a shampoo. Right, and then rinse it out, yes. When they're all done and you've taken the extra water off of them and so forth, this is one other thing too. I don't know if they still have these or not, because this is very, very old, but this works awesome. Again, the first time that you bathe anybody, this is nice and soft, and they do get to really enjoy it, okay? And then you've got this for the back and the hindquarters that are so dirty, and this just digs the dirt out. And you've got this for the legs. So you've got everything. It flips over real easy, saves a lot of time. And I'm big into time. There are fungal, sometimes they come in and they have a fungus. We had one last year that was really bad, which is another reason, like Ab says, bring them in early. Because if you do have some sort of a fungal problem with their skin, which is your rain rot or whatever, who knows, some are much more sensitive. You can take any of the shampoos, the fungal shampoos that are out there, and use them. But you at least need to treat the coat once and get all of that dead stuff out of there. And then again, it's just elbow grease with the curry comb every day to get those pieces of scabbing out of there and so forth. On the tails and the manes, I use the regular shampoo, and then I do use a conditioner. Not every time. A lot of times it's just before I go to the sale, and like today, because it gives me, once I do it once, I really don't have to do it again half the time until sale time. Unless I've got a tail that is really dry and maybe breaking a lot, then I will condition it a little bit more, but I don't really use it that often. But I don't use a good one. I didn't find that I needed it, so this is like Big Lots, you know? So, and it works. I think that's about it for washing. Any questions on washing or bathing? No, okay. Now, when we go to sale, these are the halters that Ab has that they wear most of the time now. They're awesome. They're rubber. They're really hardy. Very seldom do they break. Usually these don't go on until they've already been taught to be on the walls. And these are awesome when they're bathing them because they get wet and they dry off, okay? Whereas your leather, forget it, and your nylon is terrible. It really irritates the face. So I really don't like to put the nylon on them when they're in their stalls after they come in to be prepped. So this is just something, and Ab knows he has those made. All right, now to go into before they're prepped.
You have those made?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm just thinking that now that we know how great they are, how do they get them?
Yes.
Well, I tell you what, this gentleman, he doesn't keep any of them ahead. And the last time I got them, I got 2 dozen, and Charlie Beaver took 1 dozen of them. So if I can help you, you can look at them, and if you like them, let me know, and I'll try to get some for you. That's all I know. He doesn't keep anything made up ahead. It's kind of a specialty item sort of thing, but they're real simple. And they just, like Lynn said, they work real good when you're getting yearlings ready, because if you're bathing or whatever, the rubber works so good. $10.
They're nice too because you can just wipe them off. Definitely. They're also light. They don't leave the marks on the face that you get off of your other halters, which you try very hard not to do. These are our sale halters, and they don't go to the sale in these, they go to the sale in those. These go usually outside the stall every morning after I clean everybody up. Now we're talking about being at the sale. Then these go on for the day. At nighttime they come off. Because no matter what, you've always got the one in the bunch that rolls in the mess. So we don't need it. So it's much easier that way. The headbands is a personal preference. We happen to like what the one that we're using. I think they're becoming much more common. The pros about the headband is that they hold the halter in place. And I really appreciate that because there's nothing worse than looking at a yearling with a twisted halter that's halfway around its face. The presentation I don't care for it.
Laying way back on his neck.
Oh, yes, yes, it keeps it where you want it. As far as I'm concerned too, we like to clean the yearlings up early in the morning when we're at the sale because you only have one time to make that good impression, that first impression. So we try really hard to get them done earlier in the day.
Linda, what about shifty bits?
Again, I think it's a personal preference. I was just talking to someone earlier about them. I like them, again, for strength reasons. We don't usually need them on the fillies. Most of the fillies are fine, and Ab prefers not to use them if possible. But when it comes to me handling the colts, I really need it on them at the sale. Prior to that, they don't wear them here except to get used to them. Well, maybe 2 weeks before or whatnot, I'll put it on them in the stall just while I'm working on them, and so that they'll get used to it and they learn not to chew as much. If you use it the first time at the sale, they chew on them too much and it looks terrible, and they make all the foam around the mouth and so forth. So usually if I've got them used to it, most of them do not, you know, get used to it and it's not a problem at the sale. But again, if we're using them, we try to put them outside the stall. If there's a colt that's a little bit tough for me or whatnot, it goes outside. The guys usually don't need it, but I do, you know, so it's just a safety kind of thing.
But again, the guys do need it. If you've got kind of an unmanageable colt,
yes,
the guys do need it.
Yes.
So, and we pretty much go by the individual according to how we would use that.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason I don't like it on a lot of horses is they just stand there chomping away and they won't quit. And I like to see a horse stand and relax. Especially
just really quick. These that are on here, what I do is I face it in. Okay, there's the front. I will face it in because it clips on real easy. And I see an awful lot of people whip them into the horse's mouth. I don't. A lot of times my hand goes here, okay, and I just gently insert it. If I need to, a thumb will go in here, and they just gradually take it. And they don't mind it then because it doesn't smash into their teeth. Then just very easily clip it on the other side. You can use a regular lead that doesn't have a chain on it. I don't like it. So there's several different ways of doing this. You can go through this way here and clip it onto your halter, which I don't usually do this because there's too much chain here. So a lot of times what I'll do so I can hold this, I go through here and then bring it back up here again.
That's the longer chain.
Right,
Which
it's a longer
going
chain.
over the nose and up to here, then that works good, but that's not really what you want for here.
One other thing that handlers do need to be careful of is that a lot of times these don't fit through. This one does, but there we go. When you clip it up here and you're handling here or here, sometimes when you're handling the horse, it has been known to come undone. But what happens is it flips back on your hand, and because this is done 3 times, you don't lose your horse, you know, so it works well. When we're at Harrisburg, and even if it isn't too warm, when we're over in Sunbury, we will use our blankets, okay? These are just like a thin cotton. It keeps the dust off, keeps them a lot cleaner if they lay down. I mean, stuff goes on this and not necessarily them. It just really works well. The sale is not the time to get them used to that. They do get used to those things pretty much here. Okay, again, before they go in the arena, we are just using the Rainmaker again. The final spray, when they come to me, I mean, they're usually all clean. So just before they go into the arena, they get a brushing with a soft brush. And if need be, you have a stiff brush ready. They get Peppy on just before they go in. And it's just a general spray all over. Spray the mane and tail really good because it does pick up the highlight. I mean, it does pick up the highlights. A lot of times I'll just spray it on my hand, and it will, if you just rub the mane down right at the top, it lays it flat and it will stay there. The tail, make sure you run your hand at the top and it just brings it in, and it just gives a finished look to the tail, and spray the tail thickly. The laser sheen, again, it's the laser sheen that goes on every day, even the morning of the sale. I mean, it goes on a cloth and it just goes on their body, and it's just awesome. You just look at those guys and you'll see. For the studs, we just use a little bit of some sort of menthol stuff in their nose, not very much, just enough so that they don't, a lot of times they'll end up with a filly in front of them or behind them, and that's not fun at all. A highlighter, again, you can use any highlighter you want. We just started using this one here. It really doesn't make any difference. Again, they're from Big D's. It goes on the muzzles. It goes just around the eyes, not much. You can do too much and it looks really globby. So it just goes on your hands and it just gets rubbed on the face and on the muzzles. Sometimes the horses will end up with a mark on them. We will cover it up a little bit with either a shoe polish, brown or black, whichever. It makes the coat look much better in that area rather than a gray spot somewhere, because most of the people know that it's there anyways. It only goes on for the sale. So they've already checked out the horses before, so you're not covering up anything that you shouldn't be, okay? Because there's not very many people that will buy them without looking at them. Mark does this part, and this is sanding the hooves. Again, it's done usually the day, maybe the day before they're going to the sale, and all it is it's just a sanding block, and most of the time, this is already done by your blacksmith, but in the course of the week and a half, 2 weeks, whatever it is, it's gotten a little bit rough again, and it has either some manure on it or this just makes it a little bit more smooth. Do this, and then your oil and your hooves look awesome. They look natural. When you use this oil, make sure you go right up to the band, cover the band, because it's white or gray, and when you put this on and when you're using it on a daily basis or every other day, it also darkens that area and it makes it a much more finished looking hoof, okay?
Linda? What do you do with white in the tail? Like it's been looks like it's been bleached blonde.
You know, I wouldn't do anything except shampoo it real good. And I'm one of those that when I shampoo a tail, I get down to that bone. And I will take a comb, and I will literally comb it so that I get all that dirt out there. I do not like a dirty tail. You know, maybe it doesn't show, but I know that it's there. And there's something about when you put this Peppy on something and there's one little mark of gray there from dust, this picks it all up.
This has just been sunburned.
I would use the conditioner. I would just I would shampoo it real good and put a conditioner on it, because I don't think you can really do anything with the color. You know, you can't really change that. The laser sheen also helps you comb out these thick tails, okay? Because it gets into the hair, and it allows you to take it out without ripping so much of the tail out.
Ruly, and how do you get the manes when you take them to the sale ring? Their manes look like they've been to the finest beauty salon. How do you train the mane to lie on one side?
Number one, they should all lay to the right side. If they're laying to the left, it's the wrong side.
Okay, a lot of times they're split. Sometimes you get one that's totally on the wrong side, and it's just not allowed. Just get these. You can get these, again, Big D's, Quarter Horse Congress, wherever you go. It's awesome having Big D's at the sales down here in Delaware, because that's when I'll usually go in and pick up the products. And what I do is I usually take, probably a 2.5-inch section. I braid very wide, just big wads of fur, mane, and just bring them all over into the side that I want. And I don't necessarily braid it down all the way. I also don't leave it in until sale time, because you end up with the wavy part and then the straight part, and you don't want that either. They've been braided, and I just took their braids out yesterday. But usually, if you leave it in 2 weeks, it doesn't seem to bother them. They're not necessarily rubbing them because the braids are big and not tight. I don't wash them then. I wait until I do take the braids out, or else I'll wash them before I braid them. But we don't have any problems with the manes because they all end up staying on that one side.
One of the things that happens, it seems like it always happens to the most valuable ones, or something, you're a week away from the sale, or maybe 24 hours away from the sale, or whatever, and a colt gets cast or something and winds up with a filled leg. What do? I know it depends on the situation.
Right, you crash.
Cry. What do you deal with? How do you deal with filled legs or tendons, that type of stuff?
Well, you know, it depends what it is. We can use ice. We can hose him. I always do them up with absorbing. I'm a great believer in absorbing. And what you got to do, you got to get that thing down. You got to get it down fast. So your ice, water hose, absorbing, those things will do it. You can have your vet come in and give him a shot to try to help you too.
Another thing you see sometimes on sale yearlings on the muzzle are warts. They don't hurt the horse necessarily, but they're certainly unsightly. What do you do?
As soon as we see we've got a muzzle with warts, we take scissors and cut them off, and they go away. Now, once you start them bleeding, that gets rid of the virus or whatever, and it works. When I was at Elmhurst, every year we'd have probably several of them that would come in with warts all over them. So it's a viral thing. Yeah, it's a viral thing, and that's a
wart vaccine for cattle. I don't know whether you use it for
I don't know if there is such a thing for horse, but
how soon before the sale? I mean.
Oh, do it as soon as you get them up.
Yeah, but well, I didn't know what to do with it. I got one with them.
Do it today.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Sales for 2 weeks.
Do it today. Yes, get it done. Much better to get them off of there, and yeah, you'll be fine. They'll heal over. You won't be in trouble.
You don't put nothing on it, then just cut them off?
I just cut them off.
One other question is, we talked about corrective trimming and trimming before the sale, but you always take your yearlings to the sale shod in front with plates on. How long in advance of the sale do you shoe them?
The idea is to have a better looking foot, to maybe make this horse look more mature. And it's true that with the shoe on, now we use just a light plate is all we use. And I had a couple of them that you know, they might be on the floor of the RTV. They might be on the floor of that. Either that or I threw them in the room here, Mark. But it's just a light plate. We like to do them about 6 weeks before the sale and then reset them the last. Usually I have to take him about 2 weeks out, which I don't really like, but I'd rather do it about a week out. But, and like Linda was saying about their feet, you're going to need those sanding blocks because from the time you do them until you get to sale, they get dirty and you're going to have to sand them off nice again.
Back on yearling exercise, what do you think about round pens?
I like them, yeah. The round pen is fine. And the main thing is when you're exercising your yearling is to make him go both ways. Take him in because I always remember the one from my friends in Kentucky that when they first come out with walkers, he put his horses on the walker and he walked them all the same way for the whole time, and they all walked like this and they all stood like this. So you need to change them about to keep their bones the same, working the same.
How long do you do it each time?
Again, I don't. Well. Yeah, you probably, just about the time he's trying to work a sweat up, probably quit with him, you know. It doesn't, that kind of exercise wouldn't take a whole lot. I think if I had an exerciser, I would just have to start out and learn, you know. But I've watched, like Kentuckiana and Carter's down there, they put theirs in there and they let them go for a little while. They don't go very fast. They just, they're just maybe on a slow jog, taking exercise. About 10 minutes? Yeah. No. And the same thing if you got one in there and you got your whip and you're making him go around the circle, you know, if he was well broke, you'd be able to stop him and then make him go the other way. And what, probably 5 minutes each way or something. I think you have to be careful not to overdo it. I think you can overdo it.
Albert, I'd like you to talk a little bit, if you could, about getting yearlings to stand and walk properly and the physical presentation of the yearling to buyers, because that's very important. I mean, you've got to show them off. They've got to look at their very best.
One thing you have to keep in mind is that you can't just go to the sale and do that. You got to teach these yearlings what we usually do when the boys are turned out in the mornings. They bring them out of the stall and they don't go right straight to the paddock. They bring them out and they stand there with them. And of course they're all wanting to get out there, so they're learning a good lesson just having to stand there and wait their turn. When we get ready, we're going to turn you out. So you get there, and then what you want to do, you want to be sure that when a buyer's looking in the front of your horse, that both feet are front here. One shouldn't be back here. They should both be together, not like this, but not like this, but just right. When he's looking at the front of your yearling. When he moves around the side, you want, if he's looking at, say he's looking at the left side, you want your two left feet forward, or left foot forward, left one back, and your other two in. In other words, when you look at that colt, you want to see the two on that side of the horse in a little, and on this side stretched out a little. And that's a beautiful picture. Most trainers want them walked. Most buyers want them walked. And what we usually do is just walk them as short a distance as we can and bring them back, because not many horses walk good. I don't put anything in how they walk. I'm sorry, I don't put anything in how they walk. One of the nicest horses we ever sold was Falcon Elmerhurst, and every time he walked that colt, he did this. And I thought, oh my God, you know, and he was a beautiful looking animal. He had a nice front on him and everything. And I'd turn him out in the paddock and he would just widen right out and just go beautiful. Went clean and everything. So I told all the handlers, the grooms, and don't walk him for anybody unless they ask you to. And if they ask you to, go about 5 feet and turn and bring him back.
But that also shows you that sometimes horses that walk badly, as he says, he went on to be a terrific racehorse and a terrific sire, and I've heard other people say the same thing, that they don't put a great deal of credence or credibility into what people see when they watch a yearling walk.
If they stand, you know, toed in or toed out, is that an automatic flag for somebody?
No, it's not. All the Meadow Skipper's horses toed out, and he was one of the greatest sires of all time. They all toed out. Now what we always tried to do was to correct them as much as we could without hurting the horse. So it's not totally a turnoff. To a green person, yeah, to a green person, more pacers toe in than toe out. Log toed in. Jenna's Beach Boy toes in, you're right. So you see, Jenna's Beach Boy had world records on every size racetrack. So how do you know? How do you look at a horse and say, well, what you're really buying is pedigree. And if you're buying a horse that doesn't have any pedigree, there's no real fast production in that pedigree, no matter how great this colt looks, it's probably not going to be there unless you're really lucky. But if you're buying a horse that doesn't stand just right or has got some other little flaws, but he's got a great pedigree, don't let anybody steal him, because he's probably going to make it.
Yes, ma'am.
What's your opinion about breeding to a first or a second year stallion?
Yeah.
First or second year of breeding.
First year, I always jump on the first year like everybody does. And so I jumped on Real Desire and got totally wrecked. Yeah, this filly last year was a beautiful filly. She had size, length, she was beautiful. Real Desire out of Hidden Virtue. I got $35,000 for her. I was dreadfully disappointed, because if I ever bred one that looked like she could get up there close to 100, and if two people really wanted her, could bring anything, it was that filly. So you see, there you go. That was first crop sire. But this year, I think it'll be a different story with the Real Desires, because they've gone to the track. He's got about 30 winners now. They go real fast. I see 25, 26 last quarters for 2-year-olds. I think that this year it'll be a different story. So keep a watch, because I've got a fabulous colt to sell out of that same mare. And you know, this colt, he's a little bit sickle-hawk like his mom, but in the old days, the old-timers always thought the sickle-hawk horses, that meant speed. Do you ever hear that? Right? Yeah, that meant speed, because when they push off, you see, if they're a little bit sickle-hawk, they reach up a little further, and when they push off, they can go a little faster.
And the upside to selling that filly for not quite what we wanted was that she got into some really good hands, and so far everything's great, which as sellers, we don't get to pick who buys them.
That's right.
And sometimes that means actually more on the other end when you're breeding American the next year. Yeah. If that colder filly goes out and goes in 50 and wins $1 million, it's kind of who buys them too. So yeah, we were upset, but we were also glad.
Yeah, yeah, that's good, Mark. Good point. And also, huh?
It's all on tape. I hope he comes back
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, well, the other really funny part of that story that you didn't tell was that we knew this man had over $100,000 to buy this filly. We knew he had it. We didn't do anything, and we won't do anything.
The filly that I have in there is a nice filly, but she's a little short. You would not want a tall person. You have a lot of common sense you talk about. You don't want a 6'6" person showing a yearling, any yearling, but certainly not a smaller yearling.
Yeah, you're taking out a filly that's this tall. You don't want somebody that's this tall, because he's going to make that filly look worse than she is. So try to, if you can, let your wife show her if she's a little shorter or something like that.
Let's talk about shipping to the sale. You've got this yearling, you've prepped it, you've done everything right, raised it right and all that kind of stuff, but now you're going to put it in a trailer and drive it 50 miles or 500 miles and take it to the sale. It's a great opportunity for something to go wrong and all of your work to come undone in a few minutes. What are the precautions as far as bandaging, tranquilizing? What do you do?
I'm going to let Mark add to this after I get done, because he's the young guy now that has to handle all these things. But we don't bandage our horses to go to the sale. There's nothing wrong with it, but we go places to pick them up, and they put these bandages on. Here these horses go. They've never wore bandages before, and you're afraid it's going to scare some of them before you ever get them on the trailer. But we use slant load trailers for our horses, and I have full partitions. There's really very little place for that horse to ever get hurt unless it's a real wingding. And if we know that, we're going to tranquilize it before we ever load it. Now, I took a filly to New York last year, the Morrisville sale, and that filly, we thought about tranquing her before we loaded her, and we thought, well, you know, we've handled her so much, she's probably going to be all right. But this filly had a little side to her. and she showed it on the way up there and took out the window, and how she ever got a place in her hind leg, I don't know. But anyway, I got up there and I had to get busy getting that thing straightened out. So there's nothing wrong with bandaging them up. We just don't do it, and we touch wood. We've never ever had a horse get hurt. It's most of those people. Yeah, we have one client down there that tranks them all, but the others, they're not tranquilized, but they're put in and out of equicizers. They're experienced in all these things that happen to them, you know, and I would think some of theirs have probably been shipped too. And it's like old hat, they go right up the ramp. A lot of horses, when they come to a trailer that's never been loaded with a ramp, they don't like it. They're maybe used to step up. We like ramps for the reason that if we're hauling mares and foals, that baby isn't going to fall out of the trailer when he comes out. I bought one step up trailer, a feather-like trailer, and I couldn't wait to get rid of it. I got more horses hurt. Even mares coming off of that trailer would catch the back of their tendons and just take the hide off. And it was all rubber, you know.
I would just say that it's like the imprinting. It's practice. If you can get a neighbor's trailer, or if you have a trailer, take and load that thing 5 or 6 or 10 or 20 times if you can, and get it used to it. It's what you get them used to, and if you've got an oddball that's a freak and it just won't respond, use your tranquilizer. Start out driving real slow and continue to drive that way. Dad always told me that you put a glass of water on the floor of the truck. If you spill that glass of water, you're doing something wrong. And you know, it's times 10. Whatever you're feeling in that truck, it's times 10 in that trailer. So I mean, try to get them used to it if you can. Lead them up in a trailer, feed them in the trailer. I've had people tell me that, oh, that's fine. This horse is used to the trailer. We feed him in it. Well, it sounds stupid, but it's kind of smart in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, repetition and know the individual horse. If you know that horse has a side foot, man, this thing's like a stick of dynamite. It goes off every 2 days. Well, know that in your head and have your tranquilizer ready.
Yeah. When you get horses, obviously you've sold them at different sale arenas, Lexington, Harrisburg, Sunbury, Souder Downs, and probably places that aren't as well prepared. What do you need to do? You need to look at the stall itself to check for nails, or do you disinfect stalls? What should the consignor be aware of when they physically get their yearling there?
Well, you should check your stall for nails first, because especially if it's an old facility, which we used to go to sell yearlings in, and we used to have to go in and pull nails out where they'd have maybe they just drove a nail in and put a cross tie on or whatever, and you have to watch for broken boards. When we go to Harrisburg, we have sheets that go over the top part of the stall. You don't want two colts to get together, and or sometimes you put a filly in by a colt and they'll go crazy. So there's ways to take care of those things if you just think far enough ahead. The main thing is, before you put your horse in that stall, that you've got it like it should be and that you want it to be. Some facilities you go to have a lot of concrete. Yeah. You don't want to walk a horse on concrete unless it's been roughed up, you know. But if it's real slick concrete, man, a horse can just go down and break a hip. We had a good friend that had a very, very expensive yearling at a sale, and fell, and we get him up, but he wasn't right, and we got him into the trailer and took him to New Bolton Center, and that horse never did get over that. Not only did they miss selling him there, they lost their colt.
When you get ready to ship your yearlings to Harrisburg from here, do you grain them the night before?
Oh yeah, we grain them that morning. Yeah, I don't know what this thing is about not graining horses. When we pick up mares, whatever, I want to make sure they've been fed, and I've got a water bucket at least a couple hours, if I can, before I load them. And we don't put hay bags in. We do never put hay bags anymore. We did it for years and years and years and wondered why we did it. We had horses get choked on the vans, and you wouldn't know they're choked. And very, very easy for yearlings to get tangled up in them, you know, just pawn. So we do not use hay bags. If an owner wants us to put a hay bag in, we're glad to oblige. We got all kinds of hay bags.
Maybe we should talk a little bit about videos for yearlings and how important they are, and you know, obviously you'd rather have no video than a bad video.
Well, I think it's real important to go to the sale with a video, because if for no other reason the fact that you can show your colt is sound, he's out there in the paddock playing, I don't care what he's doing, he's sound. That's number one. To be able to see him in action, that's the second thing. You really want to show him off in his best. You should try to make your video as positive as you can, because that's what you're trying to do, is market your yearling. We do all of our yearlings. We never used to put them, when we go to Harrisburg, we never used to put them on the intercom system that they have there because it was too expensive. But we did it last year, the last 2 years maybe, and we think it helps. People at Harrisburg, they go and sit down out there in the lounge area, and if they come to your page, maybe want to look at what you've got and there's nothing there, that might hurt you. 2 minutes or less, about a minute, would you say, Evan? Yeah. In other words, just a very, because people come and they'll get tired of watching it, see. So we like to just hit them with something really nice, and then they can ask to see it over again if they want to.
Any other questions for
one thing else I might mention, like a lot of people come to see your yearlings and, oh, you want them all brushed up nice and looking good before you bring them out. So the guy's standing there and he's got other places to go and he's wanting to get going, you know. You shouldn't hold him up like that. Now, don't ever forget the first impressions are everlasting. I believe that firmly. But what you got to do, you got to get the barn early in the morning. You got to get that yearling ready to show. And you need to keep his mane straightened out, his foretop nice, tail nice, straw out of it and everything. So that when somebody comes by there, you don't have to take 10 minutes to get him ready. And I don't mean 10 minutes, I mean 2 minutes is too long. I mean, people come to ask to look to see your yearling, so if we think it's taking too long, I'll just tell them, bring him on out here. Guy's wanting to go.
I'm going to talk a little bit about promotion and advertising. But now let's say you've got the best looking yearling, you've got a great pedigree, you've got a great individual, you've raised it right, you've prepped it right, you've got it to the sale. Now you got one more big problem is, you look around, you got hundreds and hundreds of other yearlings there. And everyone there thinks that they've prepped their horse, they think they've got the best yearling. How in the world are you going to get people to look at your horse out of all those hundreds or maybe even 1,000 other yearlings? What's going to make them, what's going to bring them to your consignment, to your shed row? Well, obviously it's got to be some promotion, and it's up to you to do it, because who benefits the most if your yearling sells for a couple extra $1,000? You benefit the most. So it's up to you. Don't go to the sale after you've done all this work with your yearling and just assume that people are going to beat a path to your stall door. It may not happen. It may happen, but you can't afford to risk it. Keep in mind that the most effective form of advertising, does anybody know what the most effective form of advertising is? Word of mouth. And the great thing is, it's free. Now, it's not the only form of advertising. We know traditionally yearlings have been advertised in magazines, certainly we have good magazines in the standardbred industry. We have the USTA has Hoofbeats magazine. There's the Horseman in Fairwold in Kentucky. In Canada, there's Trot magazine, the Canadian Sportsman, Harness Edge. There are regional publications, regional or state publications. The Hoosier Horse Review and places like that, the Ohio Standardbred. So you've got a large choice of different publications that you can advertise your yearling in. Now, if you've got an Ohio-bred yearling, or an Ohio-sired yearling or something like that, that's going to bring maybe $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, do you need to be advertising in a national magazine? Maybe not. You have to look at where your buyers are going to come from. You have to be realistic. As I said before about staking, you have to know what is enough and what is too much. You don't want to overstake, you don't want to understake. With advertising, you don't want to over-advertising. You don't want to spend $5,000 on advertising for a $6,000 yearling. You've just basically lost all your money. So how much should you spend? Well, I've heard a rule of thumb is 3 to 5% of what you expect to get. So if you're selling a yearling for $10,000, you might spend $300 to $500. But that's just a rule of thumb, and you can make your own decision. That's just for one horse. Now, if you have several horses, you can multiply that. Obviously, if you're selling 100 or 50 yearlings, then you need to advertise. You need to advertise probably in the national magazines and go about it right. But if you've got one or two, you need to kind of pick your spots carefully. If you have a high-powered yearling, you want to make sure that the whole world knows about that. And I know that when Albert was at Almahurst Farm, they always had a feature yearling every year, like Hawk Almahurst and Falcon and all the ones that they thought, they put them on the back cover of Hoofbeats magazine. And, you know, I work for the USTA, and I'm going to try to keep this impartial, but I think that helped a great deal in enhancing. You got to have the horse, and you can't put just any horse in there, but that was a real great place to showcase a yearling. So feel free to spend the money, but spend it wisely. Also, in addition to magazines, something that we didn't have a number of years ago was internet advertising. Certainly the USTA has an internet website. I think in the month of June we got 9 million page views. I was talking to someone about that earlier. That doesn't mean 9 million people. That means people are coming and viewing 9 million different pages on our website. That's not one person doing 9 million page views. It's a number of people. Those numbers always astonish me because we have like 23 or 24,000 members of the USTA. So how do you get 9 million page views? Well, they're from racing fans who are not members of the USTA. They're from people all over the world. We get people from Europe, from down under. So the internet, and not just the USTA website too, but there are websites for the Horseman and Fair World. Standardbred Canada has an excellent website. The Harness Edge. There are other websites, and website advertising is a little different because you don't have pages per se, but you have banners or spots on there. And you can take these banners maybe just a week out from the sale and buy them, and they're often quite reasonably priced, and advertise your yearling on there. And many times you're in a rotation. And I know for a lot of people, including me, some of the internet stuff is a little bit difficult to understand, but I have great confidence in the power of the internet to reach people. But let's get back to that word of mouth, because we all agree that it's the best form of advertising, and we know that it's free. So if you're selling a yearling, how do you get the word out? Well, you talk to people. You talk to people that you see at the races. You talk to people you see at the fairs. You talk to your friends. You say, boy, I've got a terrific pacing filly I'm selling this fall. Boy, if you know of anybody that's looking for a good pacing filly, be sure to tell them about my filly. Get the word out. Tell them, of course, where you're selling it and so forth. And then you might also try to figure out what people, what buyers might have a particular connection to your horse. For example, if you're selling a yearling by Dragon Again, let's say a Pennsylvania stallion, what you want to find are the people who are having success with Dragon Again foals, particularly Dragon Again fillies. What I would do is I'd sure be on the lookout on websites, USTA websites, in the magazine, the Horseman and Fair World, anybody who's had success with a Dragon Again colt or filly, they're going to be a very good prospect for your yearling because they've already had success. We tend to go back to the same well where we had success the first time. Anybody who's had success with a horse from that same female family, maybe they've had something out of a half-sister to the dam. You want to find out who those people are. Those are people that are going to have an above-average interest in your yearling. Third part is if anybody's bought a yearling from you in the past and had success, or maybe if they haven't had success, those people are likely to come back. I know that there are customers, there are people that come and look at Albert's yearlings every year because, one, they like the way he raises a horse. Maybe they like the mares, the pedigrees that he has, or as I say, they like the yearlings that he presents. They're going to come back. They may or may not buy, but they're going to come back and look. That's about all you can ask, is get them to look. So once again, anybody who's had success with a horse by the sire of the yearling that you're selling, or from the female family, or anybody that's bought from you in the past. Now, if you know the person's name, it's not that difficult. The USTA sells a membership list. And I don't know, I think the price of these are like $22 or something like that. But in here are the names and addresses of every USTA member. It's going to take some work. It's just like getting a yearling ready. It's going to take some work. But if you see, let's say, and regardless of who the sire is, but let's say if you can find 15 or 20 people who have had recent winners by the sire of your yearling, you can find their name in here. You can find their address in here. Now you still got to do some work. And I'll tell you what I've done is I've sent letters to people in the past couple of years. I've been kind of on the other side of this. I've sold one yearling for the last 3 years. And they've been, for the most part, modestly priced yearlings. I hope they're not modestly, but sometimes that's the way it works out. They're not $100,000 yearlings. But you can find the names and addresses of people in here that own these horses. Send them a letter. That's one way that you can reach out to that person that has a particular interest in your horse. Another way that you can reach them is through Pathway, which is the USTA's online database system. And I've got some coupons here for a $10 off on a trial subscription to Pathway. It is a subscription service. It's a price per click service, so you only pay for what you get. You do need a computer. You do need internet access, but you can go in there. It's basically like having an entire set of sires and dams books, having the USTA membership roster, having yearbooks. You can find not only current information, but you can find past information. There's not much in harness racing that you can't find on the USTA's Pathway system. And I know that for the Canadians here, Standardbred Canada has just come out with something called Track IT. I'm sure a similar system. I'm more familiar with Pathway. So this is a good time to say, well, you know, do as I do, not as I say. Well, as I said, I've sold yearlings the last couple of years. I sold a striking Sabra a couple of years ago. So what did I do? Is I tried to look to see who's had good striking Sabras. There were a lot of them. I was selling a filly. I was particularly interested. So I made up a hit list of people that I thought might have a reason to be interested in striking Sabra fillies. And through Pathway, or through the USTA membership roster, I can get the names and the addresses of all those people. I can also find anybody that's had success with the female family of the yearling that I was selling. And once again, if there's anybody that I know is a customer of Albert's or someone that I might think, you can find this. And I think the first year I sent out like 47 letters. Now what did I have in that letter? Well, I had a copy of the catalog page, just to bring that horse to the buyer's attention. I had a letter which was very simple, said, I hope you'll take time when you're at the Harrisburg sale to look up hip number 982 or whatever it was. This is an outstanding yearling filly by Striking Sabra, whatever, you know, and gave my sales pitch. It doesn't have to be a professional letter. What you want to do is you want to reach into that person's mailbox and put that letter on their kitchen table, and so that the person says, I'm going to Harrisburg in 10 days. I think I'm going to turn down the page of this filly on this catalog. I want to take a look at this filly. And so let's say if you sent out, you know, I sent out I think about 50 letters for that Striking Sabra filly, but let's say you find a lot more potential buyers and you send out 100 letters. What your costs are going to be, $39 in postage, 39-cent stamps. You're going to have some copying costs if you go get the catalog and copy the page, and maybe some other costs in envelopes or paper or something like that. So you're, what's that? 50 bucks, let's say. Now let's say I send out 100 letters to people that I think might be interested in my yearling. And of those 100 people, 85 of them say, no way, I'm not interested. Or they're busy or they're not going to the sale. Let's say 15 of them say, this is worth looking at. So 15 people, 15 more people, go look at my yearling. And of those 15 people, maybe 5 people like the yearling. That's pretty good. Maybe not 3 people, not 5, but 3 like her enough to bid on her. Well, that's 3 more bids I have that I probably didn't have before. And that's sure going to pay my $50, or it's actually going to be probably hundreds, or could be thousands. And your cost is maybe $50 plus your time. It's like what Albert said before, it takes time to do this and to do it right. If you have multiple yearlings, you can sure do it for multiple horses, but you're basically target marketing. I know that the Ohio Harness Horsemen's Association and its stallion directory, I think, they list addresses and phone numbers, I think in some cases, for members of OHHA. But you could also get on the phone and talk to people. It's up to you to promote your yearling because you're the one that benefits the most. Don't be too shy. Don't be afraid to go up to somebody and say, if you know of somebody that's looking for a good pacing filly, I've got one to sell. What I did also is I took a banner on the USTA website. Yes, I paid for it. And I timed my banner for 1 week on the USTA website to be right before this filly sold. So it was fresh in the minds of people. There are a lot of people checking their computers on a daily basis for results, entries, and I think that can be done very effectively. So you have a lot of different options. Advertising in magazines, great. Advertising in the internet, great new idea. Direct mail, promotions. Albert talked about having a draw for winterwood farm hats. You can get caps made fairly cheaply these days. You can get maybe your yearling's name or hip number or something embroidered on them, or give out pens at the sale. You can get a lot of novelty promotion items made pretty cheap. I can remember years ago I sold a yearling, and I think I had some pens printed up with a little message saying, you know, see hip number 365, great bred yearling colt. What is everybody looking for at a yearling sale is generally a pen or a pencil to write down their comments, and most people don't have them, including me many times. So, you know, you can buy T-shirts. You could buy, you know, you don't want to go crazy on it, but be creative, do the work yourself, because you're the one that's going to benefit from it. Now, one thing that shouldn't need to be said, but I'll say it anyway. You can brag all you want on a yearling, but always tell the truth. If you got the product, flaunt it, brag about it. But if you don't have a yearling that merits bragging on, keep your mouth shut, because you'll ruin your credibility. If I want to brag about my pacing filly and tell my friends I got an outstanding pacing filly that's selling at Sunbury or Harrisburg, when that person goes to that stall, they better see an outstanding pacing filly. They don't want to see one that's weak and thin and stands badly, because guess what? That person will never believe anything I tell them about a horse again, and I don't blame them. So you have to be honest with them. That's always the best policy. And sometimes you don't have that outstanding individual. In many cases, you're not going to have. And I remember what Albert's old mentor, Francis McKenzie, told me many years ago. I said, Mr. McKenzie, I said, what happens if you get a bad individual to take to a yearling sale? And he says, then you sell the pedigree. And I said, well, what if you have a bad pedigree but a good individual? Then he says, you don't talk about the pedigree, you talk about what a great individual it is. So you play to your strengths. You don't lie about the weaknesses. You don't have to say, this is a great looking pedigree, too bad, or this is a great looking colt, too bad his pedigree is dead. You play to your strengths. You talk about the individual. Now, if you have a bad looking individual and a bad pedigree, sell the mare or something like that, probably. And another anecdote that I'll pass on to you from Murray Brown at Hanover Shoe Farms is, he said that when he first got there, Lawrence Shepard, who was kind of the mastermind of Hanover Shoe Farms, starting in 1926, pulled Murray aside, who was just a young man at the time, and said, boy, he said, never lie to anybody about a horse. If they ask you, you tell them. If they don't ask you, you're not under any obligation to tell them. You know, they might want to know, has this colt ever been sick, or what about this or that? You know, tell them the truth. Tell them the truth. But if they don't ask, you're not under any obligation to run down your product. And of course, there are policies from the sale companies to tell people about, you know, surgeries that they've had, if there's an OCD that's been removed or whatever. Honesty is always the best policy. It may hurt you in the short run, but it's going to help you in the long run. But I do want to talk a little bit about the pathway system, because that's once again where you have a responsibility. I think in your folders there's a printout from the pathway system, and you might want to take a look at that. But one of the things that any sale company will do is, obviously the catalogs are printed well in advance of the sale. And at this time of the year, horses are taking faster races, winning bigger purses, and sometimes there can be major changes in a yearling's pedigree from the time the catalog is printed until the time the horse walks into the ring. It's the sale company's responsibility to catch those things, but it's also your responsibility. Those sale companies have a lot of horses to deal with, and it's up to you to know if there's been any changes in this yearling's pedigree. If the 2-year-old just took a mark of 153 or won a big stake in Chicago or something like that, it's your responsibility. The best way to monitor racing action is through a website, through Pathway. It can pay off in dollars and cents. And the Pathway, I won't belabor it there because you have a copy. It's got everything you ever wanted to know and then some about your any mare, any horse, racing performance, breeding performance. So I would encourage you to take a look at that if you have computer access.
First thing every morning when I come out of bed, I'm on it. Last thing at night before I go to bed, I'm on it. And it's the greatest thing, because you don't have to spend a lot of time. If you got a horse that you know just raced, next morning I get up, I look on there, it's on there.
One of the audience members in one of our breaks had asked me about protecting your interest when you go to the sale. How to go about that? Is there any kind of better way, wrong way, right way?
Well, I think that's, once again, that's an individual preference. I talked about this yearling colt that Albert sold for me, raised and prepped and sold for me a couple years ago. And he went to the sale, and obviously there were some people that liked him. They liked him so much that a trainer called me beforehand and said, "Dean, I've looked at your yearling and I really like him." I said, "That's great. You know, now I got to get somebody else that likes him, and I'm rich." And he said, "No, I like him so much." He said, "I've got some owners, and they were willing to spend a lot of money for a filly, but he said, I really liked your colt. He said, I'd like to see if you could maybe take him out of the sale and we could work up some little deal. I've got these owners, they've got the money." And I said, "Whoa, stop." I said, "You know, he's here to sell. He's going to go into that ring, and he walks out of that ring, he's going to have a different owner. I don't know how much he's going to bring." Now, that was my decision. I could have taken him out of the sale. Sale companies don't like that. I could have had somebody protect him.
The bad thing about that, Dean, not just the sale companies don't like it, but the bad thing about that is somebody might travel 1,000 miles to buy that horse. And they get there and it's and that's pretty disappointing.
And obviously at any horse sale there are inevitable outs. Horses get sick, horses get injured. That happens. But when they're pulled out, you know, frivolously, as this horse would have been pulled out frivolously, for no reason other than somebody trying to make a quick buck, that does alienate people. It's bad for the consignor's reputation. There are some consignors that have that reputation. The sale company doesn't like it, the buyers don't like it, and I wanted no part of it. And that illustrates the point that I said before. If a buyer has had luck from a certain consignment, certain breeder, such as Winterwood, they're likely to come back. So if somebody's had success with your horses, make sure they know what you're selling this year. But I chose not to protect or bid in or whatever, or take my horse out of the ring. That was my decision. But if you're expecting, let's say, $50,000 for yearling, you got a great mare and you've invested in top stuff, you've got a great prospect, and you're salivating at the prospect of 50 or 100,000 or whatever, and the bidding gets to 17,000 and hangs up, it just holds up or something like that, you're not obligated to sell that horse. You can buy that horse back through you can do it through reserves, which I don't particularly like, or you can have somebody bid the horse for it. I personally don't like that, but I understand that no one should be obligated to give their horse away. If that horse that I thought was worth $50,000 or $100,000 hangs up at $17,000, $18,000, I can buy that back, pay the commission, but now I got the horse. I got to train it. I got to find somebody to train it, and I got to pay the bills because it's now my horse. And all the work that I did preparing it for the sale all came to naught because, you know, whether it's advertising or all the yearling prep, because now I've got that horse back. But I think there are different philosophies on that.
And one thing is you should be realistic about what the real value of that colt is, or filly. Now, if you take a yearling sale, I sold a fire pen filly last year in New York for $2,700. That wasn't even the stud fee. Now, it wouldn't have happened, I'll guarantee you, if I'd have been there, but I couldn't be there. I left my horses there. It's good people. And I didn't tell them anything because I never dreamt that filly would bring $2,700. So the guy calls me afterwards and he said, Mr. Adams said, "We bought this filly for $2,700. I said, "Yeah." I said, "You didn't buy her, you stole her, I'm sorry." He said, "Well, that's what we thought." I said, "We can't find anything wrong with her." I said, "There's nothing wrong with her, but I took a bath, and I tell you what, none of us should go broke giving our yearlings away. I'm totally opposed to anybody running a yearling. I think that's wrong. That's not right. You shouldn't do that. If you got one you think going to bring 100,000, you're going to run the guy. Like I said, we knew last year the person that bought this filly for 35,000 had 100,000 to buy her. But are we going to go and make him? No, sir. I don't believe in that. But I don't think it's wrong for you to take one home for 5 if you got 5 in it. There's nothing wrong with that. The other options that you do have, if you have to take one back home, is the internet.
Yeah.
There's 2 or 3 places now that you can put them on there. The one place is like $25 for 2 months or something. And I've sold horses on and it does work.
I think the key thing here is what Albert said, be realistic about the value of your horse. They always say that nothing increases the value of a horse like ownership. I always think my horses are great, and so you think that they're going to be worth that much, but the public will tell you in that minute or two that they're in the ring exactly what they're worth. And so it's better to kind of underestimate, lowball that your yearling prices and be overjoyed than to be expecting the the moon and be disappointed. Question?
Yeah, okay, now you've got a yearling there and you're expecting to bring a pretty good price and you're very disappointed you didn't protect him. Is it all right for yourself to bid on him, or what? How do you do this? Don't the buyers kind of get upset if they see the owner bidding on his own?
Oh, sure.
Well, sure they would. Yes, they would. Yeah.
People like that've been buying yearlings, they're old timers. No, they're not. They wouldn't get upset. But most people who are new to the business or who just happen to just think that that's not right, they would be upset. It's a very touchy thing. You have to be very careful about it.
I've noticed.
I would never bid on a horse in my consignment, regardless of whether I owned it or not. I would never do that, because if somebody saw me bidding on that horse, they'd think I'm running them.
Yeah, that's
Right.
That's
right.
wrong. Running them is wrong.
Yeah. You all of a sudden you're expecting 15,000, like you said, it's hanging up at 27,000. Well, I didn't do anything. Tell anything. What do you do?
I think plan ahead. If you want somebody, a lot of times when people will protect their horses, they'll use somebody else.
Another thing, if you put a reserve on it and just to kind of protect yourself, I know some auctioneers, they get up to that, if not you like the video.
They'll drop it in a hurry.
Yeah.
As soon as they reach
Because they think you're satisfied.
Well, keep in mind that they get paid on a percentage basis too, so they should be, trying to get more money for you, because that's more money for them.
I'm going to throw in one other little thing here that I just haven't to think of it. The pedigree on Hidden Virtue that's in there. I just saw some of the boys were in there. I was showing them. She's one of the worst looking mares you ever looked at. See, now when you think about how your brood mare's got to be a great looking mare, she doesn't have to be a great looking mare. But the pedigree is a great deep family. This mare is she's sickle hawk. She has no butt on her. She's got a kind of an ugly head. Matter of fact, her ugly headed colt the year before last brought 70,000. And I said to myself then, why would anybody buy that colt? It was so bad. It was a Cam's Card Shark, and they come that way. I mean, just unbelievable.
You look the way you're supposed to.
But you know what? He won last year as a 2-year-old, and he's won this year in 52-1 already. Wow. The pedigree's there. But this old mare, if you looked at her in the sale ring, you'd pass her. So I mean, that's a real example right there to show you what pedigree does really mean to you.
How does a person like that brings in 2 horses to a sale, like myself, like regular person, stack up against someone that sells 10, like Winterwood?
Oh, that's real easy. I can tell you that real easy. Number one, you got to have something by your stall to attract people. Don't just have 2 stalls there. If you got 2 horses, get your little trunk. Something that will attract people to look down at that. See, and then all it really means is you got to dress it up a little bit. You know, it's like flowers. If everybody quit using them, we all quit using them. But it's just one of those things that you just need to do. Don't have 2 flat stalls with no stall cards. Get some nice stall cards. It's real simple.
I do not run it directly over the nose. A lot of people do. You do not have to. This right here is all I need. And see, it breaks it. It won't leave a mark on them because it goes over the halter. So just go up the halter and over on the other side. You can run it up the side if you want, but you don't have to. Another thing is make sure, because you leave a mark, when you hook the snap, make sure you hook it with the snap away from them, because many a times if you do jerk a horse, that little snap, the little latch goes right into them and creates another mark on their face. So it's just try not to. But this is what I would do, just like this, okay? Now, why don't you pretend, because it's safer, that you are the buyer. Buyer comes, buyer stands here. I come out of the stall, the horse has his blanket off and he's been cleaned up. Usually you want him standing square in front of the person. This way. No, we're not going to stay with the girls. Once in a while I will grab a halter if I need to. Square him up as best you can. That's too close. If he's doing that, just try to get him so that he's square. Sometimes, see, they haven't been worked with, so they're really not sure. There. If that's all you can get, take it. Okay? Then you just let them look them over. Okay? Now, what Ab is meaning, when someone is looking at a colt or filly, if possible, he wants the side that he's on to be the longest, which is what he is right now.
Hey.
That's what you want if you can get. Ideally, these 2 would be closer in together if you can, but it doesn't always happen. The main thing when they first see them is you square them up, because they just about always check out the front end first. And there's nothing wrong with talking to your horse as you're standing there either, because a lot of times they know your voice and they will be quieter. If they're used to being, you know, petted and slapped and so forth, you know, on the butt, it's a great thing, because there's many buyers that come in and all of a sudden I'm holding a horse and they go and slap it on the butt. Well, yeah, it's not good. So have them used to that kind of stuff if possible. Now, if he wanted to see him walk, a lot of people turn away. I can't do that. I don't have the strength to do that. The horse can get away from me. So again, for me, what I would do is probably ask the buyer to come up here, just so that he's not near him. Like Dab says, don't walk too far. I'm grabbing his halter because he's not used to the chain. I'm going to turn him around. There's all girls down here. If you can get them to walk right along, don't walk them too slow. It won't hurt. That's not too bad. First time out, that's pretty good. When I first started many years ago, in fact it was down in Columbus, at the Buckeye sale, someone asked me to trot one. Well, I didn't know you don't trot them. And then I told them, we don't do that, we just walk them. So, you know, that's something. If they ask you, say, no, I'm sorry, I don't do that. It's too easy to get them hurt, too easy to slip, too easy to get somebody else hurt. They can get away from you. So it's a walk, that's what they get, which is the good thing about having the video. Myself, usually by this time I have brushed the legs just with the soft brush, nothing else. And this, I just take this, there's no thing. If you have, cut your buckle off because you'll get hurt. It gets you, believe me. And I would just run this up and down leg, forwards, backwards, whatever it takes. Okay. And then you can do this from the side. That's okay. Good boy. Good boy. And again, good boy. And then a lot of times I'll leave it on there, and if they're doing good and they're not really reacting too bad, then I'll work it this way. Good boy. He's had it done. Hind end is the exact same way. That's another thing with them being yearlings. I mean, an adult horse is different, but I'm always hands-on. Hands are always on this horse. I go from front to back. My hand is on the horse constantly. And again, it's just getting them used to being handled and being touched. They don't do this in the beginning either. But this is what's really safe, because, you know, to go and pick up that leg, forget it. I can end up throwing backwards or whatever. They can get me. See? And then a lot of times I'll do this and I'll just pet and hold it. No, easy. Good boy. Good boy. You know, there's another trick too that's, and I don't know why this works, but it does. And I just happen to think of it. When I go to pick up the front foot, a lot of times they're going to throw it out front, and this is just as a handler. He'll take this and want to throw it out the first few times. I don't know what it is, but a lot of times I'll just go like this with either the brush or my hand or whatever, and for some reason or other, whether it be that they can't think of two things at once, it breaks that throwing the foot out forward. I don't know why.
Just rubbing his belly.
It just works. Yep, I just tap it or quit it, and it's just tapping the belly in it. I don't know, it works.
How about using that face highlighter? I'd like to see how much you put on there.
Sure. Some people use a lot more. I don't like a lot. Now this is a first. And a lot of times at the sale it is the first for this. They haven't necessarily, I don't put this on until we go. And he's not used to me working with his muzzle very much either. No, so I'm trying not to stand in front of him. Usually by the time you get him to sale, you stand in front of him, but this is different. Oh, that feels good. Does that feel good? Definitely do nostrils, but make sure your nostrils are clean. Get them used to at home. Wiping out nostrils with paper towels or whatever it takes. Oh, good boy. If you need a little bit more, can you see the shine? There's not a lot of light here. But when they go up in the arena, And the lights pick up the muzzle, and it looks really, really nice on them. I don't have much left on my hands. You don't want very much for the eyes, very, very small amount. That's all. A lot of times I will just do this, whatever's left on my hands. And if you have a bit of unruly mane that's like this, you can take this stuff and it just finishes it. And then a little bit at the top of the tail, just at the top of the tail. And that's basically, I can see the shine from here. And it just looks better. It highlights that muzzle. And you'd be surprised how awesome it looks when you see it in the arena when they're up on their stage.
And what's that called again?
There's many different products. This one here is just Shine On, I think. It's in Big D's. Ultra puts one out. There's also a highlighter that's black. And I don't care for it. Some people use it, but I've just never really gotten into it. Number one, I think that it looks just as good like this than anything else. So I really only use the clear, or almost clear. And the laser sheen, part of the daily thing is, I think these towels are at Walmart. They come in a Sam's Club or something. Oh, I know. Huh? Get them used to being sprayed. Not only like this, but actually sprayed. And I just don't soak the towel, but just put it on there. And you use this. And I usually start with the face. I'll just do, now this is after brushing. Do the ears, get them used to the ears. You can tell. See, he's really come around really well. Again, I do one side, and you can just see it just takes off everything. This is also, as far as I'm concerned, it definitely conditions the coat. The coat, it lays all of the hair down, which Ab really, really likes the hair down. There is a time, sometimes on the, back here, you'll end up with a roughed up spot of fur. If it's not right before they go in the arena, if you have the time. Take your laser sheen or something wet and get it to lay down, and then go back and brush it. If you can do that, sometimes you have to do it a few times in order to get it to lay down. Sometimes you don't get it to lay down. You know, it's just been that way for a while or whatever. Anything else? Oh, this is what Ab was talking about, the clipping. These guys were clipped yesterday, and as you can see, it doesn't come back too far, and it goes right to the top of the...
It goes straight over the top. See how that lays down? Down nice and flat. Don't go up and down.
And it's right to the bone. You can feel it. It's right to the top of the bone. It gives them a real nice head study. If you're doing videos, when we do videos, I will come in and I don't highlight them for the most part, but they are clipped. They are wearing their good halters, so that they're presenting as if they were at the sale, okay, on the video. So, and you do start out, most of the video people start out with a headshot and then go with the pacing or trotting from there.
Then we know the day of the guy's coming for the video. Well, usually every day they're turned out, every morning when we clean the stalls. Usually we leave them in the day before that, just so they get more high, so they got more energy to run.
Do you do any brushing against the hair as far as to try to get?
When I curry, it's in a circular motion. Again, like I said, to start your yearlings, this is awesome. This little thing, it's just so soft, and they really get to like being brushed and so forth. Works out well. Again, I will, once they're used to that, I will use this on the face, and they don't mind. I'm just careful with it. But it's just usually this. And if I'm getting a lot of hair out that day, because it doesn't always happen, it seems to come off in stages, then might even do it again. You know, it's very individual. So I'm not at the hind end. A lot of times I just do this. And basically that's it. Then just hit them with the soft brush and the laser sheen. So it's about, when you first start them out, I think the other day, oh golly, I think I was 4 hours for 3 horses. So it was because it was their first day. And it actually took that long in order for them to gain some sort of confidence. I didn't even get to brush their whole body. You know, it was just more or less gaining some confidence and so forth.